In 2017, it was the iPhone. In 2018, it was both the Apple Watch as well as the new iPad Pro. In 2019, what do you think it's gonna be this time? And a lot of people are probably asking me, Drew, what are you talking about? I'm of course talking about the bezel-less trend. It started in 2017 with the iPhone X. Get those bezels down, switch to Face ID. In 2018, we got those bezels down on the Series 4. Much bigger displays, same form factor. And then with the iPad Pro, we also got those bezels down, as well as the implementation of Face ID. I think in 2019, it's gotta be delivered to the desktop market, and perhaps the laptop market as well, but we'll see about that. In today's video, I'll be exploring as to why 2019 needs to be the year that all of the iMacs get both internal and external upgrades. Let's begin. So in case you guys remember, back in 2017 at Worldwide Developers Conference, Apple updated the internals of all of the iMac computers, both the 5K ones and the 4K ones. And then of course, simultaneously, they unveiled the iMac Pro, which for the past couple years has been the go-to pro editing Mac for a lot of those video professionals out there. You see a lot of YouTubers editing with it, particularly the ones who are fans of Mac OS and more importantly, Final Cut Pro with some of those really good exporting options. But it doesn't take a genius to look at the iMac lineup and think, this is kind of outdated next to other technologies we're using. We're using the 120 Hertz ProMotion display on the iPad Pro with those thin bezels, that face unlock that works in multiple orientations. You're using this really capable, powerful device, and then you switch to your iMac Pro and suddenly giant aluminum chin, big black bezels squared off on all sides. And by no means is it an ugly device, but if you look back at the history of the iMac, it really hasn't changed that much in a long time. The design upgrades have been very minimal, probably the biggest one being back in 2012, where the whole thing got thinner, but for the most part, the 16:9 display, those bezels, that chin, they've all kind of stayed there. And I think 2019 would be the perfect year, as we've seen all of these devices go smaller with bezels and upgrade their biometrics. I think 2019 would be the year to get these iMacs finally into a new design trend, the one I think most people are excited for, thinner bezels. Particularly, I think things could be far more interesting when a device doesn't have to worry about being a mobile product. I know that iMacs are more about function and Apple doesn't necessarily care that much about how they look because the number of people using desktop computers are shrinking drastically. Most people are switching to laptops or, as we talk about iPads so much, replacing their laptops with tablets, and even most people can do a lot of things they need to do on their phone anyway. So desktops are an increasingly small market, but I do not think that means it needs to be ignored. With the advancements in bezel-less technology Apple's been investing in, being able to make a bezel-less design and not have to worry about where you rest your hands or not have to worry about your palms setting off the touchscreen, I think means that you can make some truly beautiful desktop computers in 2019. So there's definitely a lot of conceptors out there that have done amazing jobs showcasing what the bezel-less trend could bring to the iMac lineup. But on top of that, we also know that the hardware in the 2017 iMacs are still very incredibly dated. They're in desperate need of CPU upgrades, still rocking 7th generation Intel cores. And of course, we all know those GPUs could definitely use an upgrade across the entire iMac lineup. And let's hope at the end of this year, maybe we could even get an iMac Pro refresh, because I keep seeing all these concepts of what an iMac could look like if they went with the bezel-less trend and made it a bit more consistent with Apple's design scheme. One size bezel going all the way around. Dare I say it, a lot of people won't like this, but dare I say maybe even curve those corners a little bit? I don't know. A lot of people like curved corners on displays. They quite literally make it look like a well-rounded device. I would be for it, but I also understand a ton of people out there don't like it, so I don't know, maybe make it an option in the settings. Manufacture the display as a 16:9 square, but then curve off those corners via software if you like. There's probably some third-party application that'll do that for you anyway, but regardless, these designs look excellent, and I also think, given the fact that iMacs don't really have any biometrics to go off of, but now that we're seeing Face ID implemented in so many iPads and in all of the iPhone lineup now, I think adding Face ID to the Mac would be just the perfect level of extra security. And I mean, it's not a mobile product, so you don't even have to design it to work in multiple directions. You can slap that first generation Face ID on there so that when people sit down, they turn on their iMac, it looks at them, sees that it's them, and it unlocks right away. Windows 10 with their Windows Hello Face Unlock feature has been doing this for a long time, and I think Face ID is even more secure than that and probably well more optimized and would allow you to use services like Apple Pay on your Mac. And overall, I think the potential for the upgrades in the iMac are very present in all of our other devices that we're already using. One wish that I could hope for an iMac Pro generation Generation 2 is something that a lot of people were asking for in iPhones, but might make more sense on a professional computer. Apple's gotten really good at making these ProMotion displays on the iPad Pro, and a lot of people seem to like that 120 Hz refresh rate. Imagine if they brought that to the Mac as well. I know it's asking for a lot, but think about it. The iMac lineup particularly, they don't have to worry about battery life because you're plugged into a wall, so there's no battery you're draining from. And Apple already brings up the advantages of ProMotion on the iPad. Perhaps bringing that buttery smooth ProMotion design to the iMacs as well would be a great way to incentivize pros, but perhaps it's wishful thinking because, you know, the iMac is not a drawing device unless you plug in some third-party accessories, and I bet a lot of gamers out there would just think of it as you're never going to get those kinds of frames on a game you're playing on your Mac anyway, so perhaps I'm asking for too much. But I've connected external monitors to my iMac Pro before that support 144 Hz, and I know macOS supports it, and using macOS on that 144 Hz display, that was nice, and I enjoyed it a lot. So having that built into the iMac by default, that would be insanely overkill, I get that. But you know what else is insanely overkill? 5K displays. That's way more pixels than we actually need, or you could actually notice. I guarantee you if Apple put 4K displays in all the 27-inch iMacs, most people probably couldn't tell the difference at all. But Apple likes going that extra mile. They like iMacs being a little bit overkill. So that's why I'm suggesting go ahead, make it overkill. Who cares if you need 120 Hz or not? Just do it anyway because that would be a pro class device. So obviously upgrading the internals to the latest version of AMD's available graphics cards as well as Intel's latest version of CPUs, I think could make a lot of people happy this year, probably around the June timeframe. This could be done at the keynote and then they'll be available later that week and be very simple to upgrade. But I also think it makes sense that if you're going to upgrade the entire iMac lineup, both the 4K and the 5K versions, it would make sense that you upgrade the iMac Pro along with it. Because as we all know, the modular Mac Pro is rumored to come out later this year. And to keep the iMac Pro, you know, somewhat relevant at that same release, it would make sense that they at least update the specs in that and give it the bezel-less treatment that the rest of the iMac lineup could get. Are there any leaks or are there any analysts saying that the iMacs are getting refreshed this year? No. I just think it makes so much sense because the 2017 iMacs are getting increasingly dated, and if you're going to update the specs, might as well update those displays as well, right? The Mac Mini has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and yet all the iMacs, which are much more expensive devices, only have a maximum of 2. I think that could be changed. I think Apple could do something about that. I also wouldn't mind more variety to the lineup, as well as like, what if they started making 21.5-inch iMac Pros? So maybe they're not as much money or they're not as powerful as the full version of the iMac Pro we already have, but maybe there's some people out there that don't need that giant display but want that Pro class hardware, maybe in a more smaller form factor. People like MKBHD, they carry their iMac Pro with them when they go on events so that they can edit with it when they go around the country to different keynotes and stuff, and they edit in their hotel rooms. If you made some iMac Pros available in that smaller form factor, I bet a lot of people would actually go for it. Anywho, that's definitely my wish list and what things I would like to see done to the iMac lineup. I just see so much display tech and I see so many biometrics implemented in all these different Apple product categories, and I see the potential of the iMac getting that revolutionary bezel-less treatment and think, oh man, that would be cool. I'm so pumped to see that brought to the Mac lineup, but it's just not there yet. 2017 iMacs are living in the past and I'm ready for an upgrade. It's 2019, Apple, let's make it happen. Let me know what things you'd love to see in the iMac lineup in 2019 down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you in the next one.